what I always say to people about brand is like, for me, a brand is like how it makes somebody feel. I go to my favorite coffee shop and I have that first sip, like that feeling. So we always talk about that about Puresport. We're always obsessed about like, what is that feeling when someone interacts with Puresport?
Welcome back to the Fitt Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Benary. Today I'm joined by Dan Temm, CEO of Puresport. In this episode, we discuss building a community-first sports nutrition brand. Dan shares how Puresport evolved from CBD into electrolytes, magnesium, and creatine, while gaining loyalty through run clubs, apparel, and viral activations. Plus, we talk about staying focused, avoiding shortcuts, and the plan to scale for the long run. Let's get into it. The Fitt Insider Podcast is presented by EGYM. EGYM's smart fitness ecosystem is transforming healthcare through exercise. Combining strength equipment with AI-powered software and corporate wellness platform WellPass, it's leading the shift to proactive, preventative health. Learn more about EGYM's intelligent workout solutions at egym.com. Hi, Dan. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, Joe. As I was just saying to you there, I'm a fan of the show, so it's cool to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you listening in, and now pumped to have you joining to share what you have going on. I think let's start there with a quick introduction about you and Puresport, and then we'll dive in.
Cool. Yeah, my name's Dan. I'm the CEO of Puresport. Puresport's a UK-based sports nutrition company. We really focus on running right now. It's not really where the journey started. It originally started as a CBD business. Five and a half, 6 years ago, there was lots of talk in the US about CBD, the impact it was having on NFL players, UFC players, and we sort of we jumped on that hype early. And Puresport was the first brand in the world to be certified for safe for drug-tested athletes in the world. So we caught a lot of that early momentum in Europe there with sports people, but the industry became really heavily regulated here in the UK. And the founding premise of the business was founded by two professional rugby players who really struggled with injuries, was really around like the shortcut culture that the world finds itself in, painkillers, quick fix diets, all these sorts of things. So the founding premise of the business was around shortcuts and finding things that were more sustainable for our health. That started in CBD, and now, we do a much wider range of sports nutrition products, electrolytes, magnesium, creatine, and we've really built the business in a very community first way, like really having people sort of like emotionally connect with what our mission is and our journey.
I think that's awesome. This transition from kind of like the CBD, getting into a broader spectrum of products, and in that same time, like you joining the company and then choosing to get involved, what brought you there? Can you just talk about, was it kind of identifying, hey, we are now forced to move away from this CBD just given like regulations and hurdles, or was it at the same time too being like, hey, there's kind of a lot more that we can expand into, and then actually making that transition?
Yeah, so I joined the journey about 10 months in after it had founded. It was actually a teammate of mine was one of the founders. We were professional rugby players. And this was at the back end of 2019. I sort of started helping out. I'd had another business at the time. So I just knew a little bit about the journey, about forecasts, not much, but a little bit more than them. And we kind of came into 2020, and it just, we got through that Christmas there, and it just really felt like Puresport could be something really special. The name was great. The positioning around being the first tested for drug tested athletes in Europe. And then in March 2020, that's when the UK had our first lockdown. So all of our rugby games were cancelled. We were sent home to sit in our rooms, and we just piled into Puresport that year. And the more time we gave it, the more it grew. And I'd say what I was drawn to begin with is like, my whole life, I've been obsessed with sport. Like coming through school, I couldn't play enough sport. Everything I could, I played. And when I first came to the UK from New Zealand, I wanted to be a professional cricketer, and that didn't really work out. I sort of had a couple of bad summers, and then got a chance to go and play professional rugby. So did that, and Puresport kind of like really intersected two of my loves at that time, which was business and learning about things and being curious, and sport. So when I got the opportunity to join the team there, I invested some money and we worked out a bit of a deal. And that's what I was really drawn to about like the overall mission of the company, how it was really like, we really wanted to get people moving. We wanted people to put good things in their body. And one of the things which I'm so personally drawn to is like all of my greatest friends in life are the ones that I've generally found through sport, teammates, people I do a lot of exercise with now. And I'm someone that really talks about the intersection between sport and people and how something really special happens there. And that's what Puresport was about in those early stages. We didn't really know how we were going to do that or what we were going to do, but we just knew with these products, that it gave us a bit of a vehicle to sort of teach that message. And we didn't sit down with a big game plan. It's like, right, this is our product evolution. This is where we're going to go. We kind of let the customers lead us. And at that time, CBD in the UK was really like, we call it the Wild West. It was like the Wild West, like there was no regulation and then it was heavily regulated. But during the time of no regulation, there was like so many discounts, so many people selling from their garages, all these sorts of things. And we looked around and we're like, well, we don't want to be in a race to the bottom on discount and products. So what we're going to do is we're going to like build a company around a mission that people really emotionally connect with. And if you look at sports supplements in the UK anyway, maybe in the US as well, we've done a bit of looking there, like there's a lot of false promises. There's a lot of like lies. There's a lot of hype. And there's not one brand that we really like think about that's created like a lot of emotional connection to that brand. And when you think about all the other big winners in every other category, Nikes, LVMHs, L'Oreal's, all those companies, they've all been able to create this emotional connection to the brand. But in sports supplements, it kind of hasn't been that. So that's what we were really passionate about building a movement around putting good things in your body.
You talked about it a little bit there, like not necessarily having this dialed in roadmap, not knowing what the product evolution might look like, not knowing how you're going to take what is this feeling. I think it resonates with a lot of people, like me as well. I grew up playing sports, being very involved in athletics, and then all my friendships, all my relationships, and like there's a lot of people that talk about that camaraderie, that feeling, that wanting to continue that on or taking that and building a brand around it. But it's like it's there's no easy way to do that. There's no kind of like playbook to do that. How do you kind of figure that out in real time while still building a business, while still, keeping the lights on and being like, I hope at some point this like clicks. Like I hope we're able to do it. I hope it resonates with people. And I hope that ends up showing up in the bank account basically.
The three things we talk about, like I kind of mentioned there, is like, we believe if you put good things in your body, you exercise and you have meaningful social connection with other humans, you're like 99% of the way to being healthy. And because we were professional rugby players and that's where we initially had like contacts and friendships and things, we were initially like quite into rugby in terms of like where our brand was positioned. Then we had a period where we sort of started infiltrating into CrossFit here in the UK, and we're like, oh, this is amazing. All these people are spending £200 a month on their gym memberships. They really care about what they look like. They can look after their health. What we really found then is actually it's a very small group of people. And actually here in the UK, it's also a very polarizing group of people. If you're doing CrossFit, lots of people who aren't doing CrossFit don't find that appealing. And on our social media feed, barbells, abs, tops off, for like the general public, they're like, well, that's a bit like intense for me. So coming out the back of COVID, I'm not sure if the same happened in the US, but running was just like catching this wave. It was the only thing we could really do. They also did this thing for the national healthcare system here called 5 for 5, where you would run 5K, you would donate £5 to the national health system to help them through the COVID period. And then you would nominate 5 friends. So everyone was just like, getting nominated, getting into running. And off the back of that, we sort of really were able to ride that wave. We were doing stuff of like, you went for a run and you tagged Puresport, we'll give you a pair of socks. And when we came out of the lockdowns, that's when we started the very first run club. But again, it was just like led by authenticity. We were people that our jobs was paid to exercise. Then we were sat in a WeWork and we were like, hey, this sucks. Like we're shrinking. We're not doing anything. We're just hunched over our laptops. So we started doing a few lunchtime runs. A few customers messaged us and were like, hey, you're in central London. Like, that's where I'm working. Can I come for a run with you at lunchtime? One thing led to another. And then they're like, hey, maybe we should like meet up at the park, And it's tough to think about it now. But back then, 4 years ago, run clubs were like almost non-existent unless you were like a serious runner. So I think like we've always been very good at being led by authenticity. We've always said like, if it feels good to us, that's the direction in which we'll go. And, Run Club, for example, we showed up every Wednesday, every Saturday for 4 years, for pretty much no trackable way of like how much commercial return that had. But we just knew that people connected, it made them feel good, and it had a positive impact on the brand or what people felt about the brand. So I do think like, if I reran the journey now, like we would be a lot more strategic and like some of those thinking of like, how do we track that? How do we not commercialize it, but how do we understand the value that it's having to the business? But I think that's kind of like put us in a really good place. And I think so many people now, they'll go like 0 to 10 million or 0 to 20 million, basically on the performance marketing IV line, I call it. and then get there and be like, oh man, we like need to go and do community. We need to be better at organic content. We need to try and like backfill all of these things. Whereas we were like, if we're going to build a really big business, like a category defining 100-year-old business, we need to set our foundation out here of like who we are, what we stand for, the fundamentals of what a brand is. And what I always say to people about brand is like, for me, a brand is like how it makes somebody feel. Like when I put on my Nike Alpha Flyers on a race day, like, and I tie them up and they just feel good. I'm like, that's sort of, I go to my favorite coffee shop and I have that first sip, like that feeling. So we always talk about that about Puresport. We're always obsessed about like, what is that feeling when someone interacts with Puresport? And we believe if we get that right in this infancy period, then that'll set us up, the right way to be a big business.
During that time and like early on, are you bootstrapping the business? Is it, was it just the kind of like the founders and you're building it that way? How did you manage to do that while also, like you said, hey, we're trying to authentically build this and we're riding this wave of running and trying to grow at the same time?
Yeah, so we were bootstrapped for the first 2 years, and we were really lucky because here in the UK, there was this thing called the furlough scheme, which basically meant because everyone wasn't on work, the government would subsidize 80% of your salary while you were in lockdown. So it was like the perfect intersection for a startup because we were sat at home with nothing to do, 80% of our salaries coming in, and we just pile that time into Puresport. So by the time the lockdowns came off and furlough finished, we'd got the business to the right size where we could take a small salary out of it. At the end of that second year, we raised like £250,000 from family and friends, ex-rugby friends, contacts. There was 6 people there who have been amazing supporters of the brand. We then really ramped that year, 2021. We had an amazing year that year. And then 2022, coming out of COVID, a whole lot of things going on in the world. We had a really tough year. We raised again at the back end of that year, again, much more like angels, private individuals, no institutionals at that time, did a bit of a crowdfunding campaign. But 2022, I always talk about, it's like a bit of like a preseason where you go out and you get beat up in a whole lot of games and you learn all the lessons that you needed to learn. We were like, from 2020, 2021, we were just like, anything we threw at the wall would stick. And we were like, oh my God, this brand's going to run up to 20 million in no time. And sure enough, we thought we were just 2 dumb rugby players and we needed to hire some smart people from Unilever and do all that sort of stuff. And as most people talk about, that's not what you need to do. But we learned those lessons. We came out, we got back on track in 2023. And things have been going well since then.
You talked about the run groups and just how that kind of coincided with COVID. But what about like, you mentioned giving away socks and then I think hoodie and merch collabs and like some of these things. Where did that come in? And like maybe like the run groups, it's like you can't quite quantify that, but people wanting to wear your logo on, a hoodie is like that is in some ways like quantifying, hey, this is working. People think it's cool and like they want more of this.
The apparel, again, it kind of like made its own decision because we started just doing a few bundles with the products, with a cap or then a pair of socks and those sorts of things. And everyone like buy those and they'd be like, oh, can I get one of those bundles with the caps? And then people started coming down to Run Club. We were just screen printing a few tees to be like, Puresport Run Club on them, and people were just buying them. And then that really led us to like really turn the apparel into like a revenue stream, and which was amazing. We did these incredible drops. We did a whole lot of collaborations. We did one with Represent. We did a number of those, which were really, really cool. What it ended up being in 2024 was like, we had to have a moment where it's like, gosh, we're almost trying to build a business inside a business here. And I think one of the things that's really that's really amazing about apparel is it's like once you've got an inflection point, it's like free marketing because people are out there wearing your stuff and they're seeing it. And that thing for people connecting the dots is really great. But also like it's really difficult because if you get a color wrong or you order the wrong size, you got loads of stock and everybody's got an opinion on apparel. You go into the apparel room, it's like, oh, I like that color. It's like, no, I like that color and whatever. And it's like, guys, we're trying to be a really, really big sports supplement business here. So this is really a shame. But I think exactly as you say, like we talk about it like the original idea came from like back in New Zealand when you used to make, it's probably very similar to colleges. If you make the first team or you make the sports team, you got to wear this jacket on the back. It said, John Paul College first 15 rugby team. And like, that was a really cool moment. And that's what we wanted the apparel to feel like, people repping the brand, repping the mission. And yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because we actually raised institutional investment earlier this year. And you look at Puresport, it's, 5.5 years old. And if you just look at that journey, neither of the 2 founders are still day to day in the business. We don't sell the original founding product that the business was founded on. We also have been through waves of like huge run club community things and apparel pieces of the business, all these sorts of things. And people sort of say to me, I'm like, gosh, you've gone through so much, but like Puresport's kind of come out still looking good and it's clean and you guys are having a great year and all that sort of stuff. And I say to people, I was like, well, that is the power of brand. The power of brand can endure tough times and transitions and all those sorts of things. But it is crazy to think back on some of that now.
Yeah, coming kind of out the other side of that and raising some capital, like you said, and now thinking about whether it's, well, we'll just start with like the kind of product lineup, doing that in a way where I wouldn't say you have like a clean slate, but certainly now you're like, hey, we have this foundation that we want to build upon while still doing all the things that you're talking about, like maintaining like super high quality ingredients and formulations, making sure that they're tested, making sure that they're, clean and safe for people. How are you choosing, hey, we're going to go into this category? This is where we think there's opportunity. Because right now there's like, just from run groups to supplements and like an untold number of like quote unquote hydration companies. And then obviously protein very saturated and all these different categories. So how are you picking and choosing and at the same time still maintaining like the very kind of high quality of the product?
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting thing. And like we actually did a big piece of consumer research this year, which was amazing. It was a bit of a scary number when they told me how much it was going to cost. But I was like, my chairman was like, no, we need to do it. And one of the really interesting things that came out of it is like everybody loves the brand. People are like, oh man, I love the brand. But a lot of people, like, there's so many different intersections. They're like, oh, I thought it was a CBD brand. I said, I actually didn't even know they did products. I thought it was a run club. I said, oh, I thought it was a sock business and all these kinds of things. So people really resonated with what the brand looked like, what we stood for, but they like that cohesiveness and that consistency, like kind of wasn't really there. The other thing that's like really transformed our business is for ages we were looking around for the strap lines, like the Just Do It's of this world and the Gives You Wings and stuff. And we went back and forth for ages. And like, I do believe like it really helps real brand focused, emotional connection businesses to have that North Star. And we were toying around with it for ages, but last July, we came across it and we now operate under the business philosophy of for the long run. And when we use that in the consumer research and we talk to people about it, like, people got out of their chairs. They're like, oh God, that resonates to me. Like that feels like a brand that wants to support me. And people saying, oh, that feels like something Nike would say. And, all these sorts of things. And I think one of the things that's really special about the best strap lines that people won't necessarily know that this is the case, but this is the case, is something like Just Do It, for example. It means something unique to every single person that hears it. I'll think about, oh, just go for my run right now. You'll think, oh, I just got to get on to the gym or, whatever you think. But in every scenario, it means what Nike wants it to mean. And that's the same with for the long run. Some people think about longevity. Some people think about commitment. Some people think about their job and they need to stick in it for the long run. But in every situation, it means what we want it to mean. So we're really building a business around that now through the product portfolio, through the way that we treat our people, the way that we plan to scale. And one of the things that we talk about is like, if we try and out-hype the category and be louder, we're just going to lose. And what we say is like, the category doesn't need more hype, it actually needs leadership. And we really want to be that brand that, people who run or live an active lifestyle, they can come to you for everything that they need for before, during, and after exercise. We have everything you need, but we have nothing that you don't, and I think that's quite a big position to take because people are, oh my gosh, gummies are going to be this and that's going to be that. And they're running over there to do that. And we try and stay away from that. And so again, back to the consumer research, like we're saying to people, like, well, what is it that you want from us? And people do say that. They say, oh, we'd love to see a protein powder. We'd love to see a bar and stuff. And we'll take that information and we'll go and think about how we do it in a Puresport way, all those characteristics that you spoke about. But I think that one thing that's really interesting is like, it's very much a repertoire category. People jump around here, there for that and discounts. But one thing that when we meet our best customers is they say, oh, I actually really want a one-stop shop of a brand that, it's well priced. I resonate with the mission. I have a bit of an idea of like who's behind the brand. And that's not really been built in the category before. I mean, I think a brand that's doing it very well in the US is BPN, Nick Bear's Bear Performance Nutrition. I think they're doing an amazing job. We see them as a huge inspiration, the way they're doing community. They've got a wider product portfolio, the insights you get into the business there. So that's what we're really trying to build. And as I say, under that philosophy of for the long run.
This episode of the Fitt Insider Podcast is brought to you by EGYM. EGYM makes some of the most innovative strength training machines on the market, but that's only one part of their integrated ecosystem. With connected fitness equipment, AI-powered gym software, and a comprehensive corporate wellness offering, it's forging the future of preventative health. Partnering with companies worldwide, EGYM's WellPass program improves employee health by expanding access to premier fitness and health facilities. Upgrading gym floors, EGYM equips every operator with smart equipment and AI tools to create hyper-personalized training plans for every exerciser. Putting it all together, they're transforming healthcare through exercise. Experience the power of EGYM's ecosystem at egym.com.
You mentioned, BPN and other companies that are trying to do this. Now, I think for a number of years, especially like when I was growing up, everything was a derivative of like bodybuilding. So you're getting like pre-workouts and mass gainer shakes and all this stuff that really, from a brand perspective, from a marketing perspective, had nothing to do with the lifestyle that I wanted to lead, right? It's like all of these, guys in string tank tops that are incredibly juiced up on every steroid that like they're the spokesperson for these powders. And obviously now, all these years later, it is shifted in a way where it's like, oh yeah, whether it's the conversation we're having today and certainly Puresport and for the long run, like that resonates and like whether it's running or whether it's, hey, I want to be active for the rest of my life, or even like this kind of like hitting on the longevity piece that's super huge right now in terms of what people are looking for. It's like, well, the long run, like the rest of my life and all those things. But thinking about like where that leaves you with like making some of these decisions, you mentioned gummies or a gel or an RTD or, the list goes on and on and on. How challenging is it to like look at this market research that you're doing, think about the brand for the long run and make some of those like decisions in the moment? Do you feel like very confident and seeing clearly in terms of how you want to go about it? Or is it even for you like, hey, it's tough to make that call to be like, hey, we're going to do this, we're not going to do that, maybe even if like sales or consumers might be like asking for that thing?
Yeah, it's the toughest thing. Like, especially because like entrepreneurs, founders, like we're full of ideas. Startups don't die because someone ran out of ideas. Startups die because they're probably trying to do too many ideas at the same time and they're not executing on the ones that really move the dial. So I have this joke to people I speak to. I don't really say this to the team that much, but every day at the door, I have this like moment where I stop and I'm like, right, just take a deep breath. Let's just go in there and focus and stuff. And it's actually been part of the reason why we're probably not as big a business as what like we come across as in terms of like revenue size, because of the brand piece that I spoke about before. For us over the last 5 years, everything's been a good idea. We can sell socks, we can sell supplements, we can sell hoodies. If we put on a holiday for 200 people to Spain, like a running holiday or something like that, we'd sell 200 tickets this week, So like you're drawn to all these things. So I've had a really like interesting journey myself over the past, sort of like 12, 14 months of like really trying to refine my own ability to focus and what are those things that are really going to move the needle. And when it comes to consumer research, I do really love the saying about Henry Ford. It's like, oh, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. I love the premise of that. So like we listen to what people are saying, and then we're always trying to do what's right, what's right for the business. But I think my clarity at this moment in time is very good about the product portfolio, where we want that to be. And one of the things that's, frustrating for anybody growing a business, I'm sure, is like, God, 4 years ago, we used to be able to whip stuff out like that. You'd order 100 products, product development took no time, like all this sort of stuff. And now you're ordering 5,000, 10,000 units. There's 10 people in the team who you need to talk to about those sorts of things. So things don't happen as fast anymore. So I'm really coming to grips with like a bit more long-term planning and those kinds of things. But yeah, I'd say it's the most difficult thing for for someone trying to build a brand, is like almost everything is a good idea. So really pick the ones that are going to move the needle.
I talk to my brother and co-founder, all the time about that same thing. And we even, multiple times a year, and especially this year, like 2025 was supposed to be the year of no new ideas. We're not launching a new business line. We're not launching a new service. And basically every time we talk, it's like, here's another thing we could do. Here's another thing we're going to do here. And it is so challenging to maintain that focus and not get distracted and not get pulled in different directions. And this is the big thing. We, focus on the big thing, or the big 1, 2, 3 things, maybe at most, that you can do effectively at any one time. So yeah, I think that resonates with me and probably a lot of other people they're listening. Just like, you have to have that clarity. And like, look, that's why you're the CEO. Like, that comes down to you. You have to make that call. Nobody else is going to do it.
Yeah, I do love that story about Steve Jobs, where he used to talk Johnny Ive, and how he used to say to him about like, oh, what are you doing at the moment? And he used to like write a few things down on his list, and he's like, boom, boom, like, you're not doing that anymore, you're doing that. And then Johnny Ive kind of caught on, and he's like, oh, what are you doing at the moment? He started writing a few things that he didn't actually want to do. And then you'd be like, no, I know you don't actually want to do that, so you need to focus on this. And it was like, the quote something around like, focus isn't saying no to the thing that you really want to do. It's saying no to the hundreds of other good ideas that you really, need to put to the side to focus on this one thing. And I do really, I really believe in that. And I had a bit of an interesting like first 2 years, like transitioning out of the professional rugby and sport, and probably struggling in business a little bit. And I read this book called World Class. It's by a ex-rugby player called Will Greenwood and a famous, or like a successful CEO called Ben Fennell. And it talks about the like similarities between sport and business. And once I read that, and I heard it like mapped out for me like that, like everything just started to make so much sense, about the team, what the game plan is. People need to see the score. People need feedback on how they're playing, just all these little things. And yeah, like that focus thing was another thing. Like in any sport, if you're not doing good at something, or there's something that you're really good at, both of those things are going to get your focus that week in training or the team sessions that you do. And business is similar in a way of like, let's do what we're really, really good at and not be distracted by all those sorts of things. But again, like, I'm as guilty as anyone for it, because when you hear a good idea, sometimes it's like, it'd be great.
We chatted a bit about, I talked about like the merch kind of popped off at one point, and then the run groups, and most recently the thing that has kind of stood out, somebody again following from afar, is the fuel stations, like this kind of on the ground activation, community building, like all these things. And I think that goes with what you've said all along, right? Like being authentic and building community and being on the ground and like engaging with people. But on the other side of that, and you can elaborate on any of those things, but on the other side of that is like the actual execution of it, which is like not easy to come up with the concept and get there on the day of, and then, it lands and people really love it. And then afterwards, there's all types of content and social posts that are kind of driving interest. Like, can you maybe just talk like how that came about, and like, again, all these like new ideas, good ideas, choosing that one and not something else, and then actually being able to like execute on it.
Yeah, well, that's I mean, this is like this is actually such a good thing to speak about in terms of like where we are, or where we are as a business. But on the pumps, what's so interesting about that is it came off the back of the London Marathon campaign. That's where it first happened. And in the London Marathon campaign, we looked around at all the big brands who were just doing because running's just become such a big thing. 3 years ago, we did a London Marathon pop up. We did a shakeout. We had a store. It was like the biggest thing in town. Then the last 2 years, it's like everything. It's like, here's the playbook. You get a pop-up, you do some race kit, you have a shakeout, all that sort of stuff. And we were just like, oh, we got no money. And, everyone's doing this now. Nikes, Asics, New Balance, spending millions. So like, how can we show up in a way and show up in places that they can't? And our head of marketing, Hilly, and our head of brand, James, came up with this really brilliant idea about like, where will the runners be that these brands won't be, and we'll show up in those spots for those people. So we showed up to the Heathrow airport 2 days before the marathon and welcomed in a whole lot of people. We held a free pasta party in the middle of London where anyone could come and have free pasta. And then the night before the marathon, we dropped off all these marathon race day kits with like socks, magnesium the night before, hydration sticks, and those sorts of things. And we got people to tell us where their hotel rooms were and all that stuff. And there was like this amazing like campaign around the universal language of running. Like, it doesn't matter what language you speak, we'll kind of show up for you. And in addition to that, we're like, right, on the race day, we need to be showing up at mile 24 for people, helping them along. Let's tie on electrolytes. Let's come up with this, roadside recovery station. And what's so funny is like, we thought that those other three things would be the things that popped off, but it was the fuel station that just went like crazy. I think for everyone, it was just like, kind of like you said there, of like that moment where It was a relevant time in the race. We were giving things to people that they needed at mile 24, plus a little boost. It was aesthetically really pleasing and kind of like people hadn't really seen it before. And yeah, it just popped off. I did a LinkedIn post about it. It got like 600,000 impressions or something. And then it just went crazy on socials. And then that was cool because then the whole idea caught wind about, oh, they did this and they did that. But I think the thing, and my investors will hate me for saying this, and I know one of them listens actually. Like if you said to me, dang, go and build the sickest brand in the UK, like a brand that people really like connect with. They're part of the mission. They want to be a part of it. And they're happy to go around wearing the merch and rep it. Like I could do that tomorrow. If you say to me, dang, go and build a 50 million revenue business, what are the things that you're going to do between now and then the next 5 years to do that? I'm like, shit, like that's not really like what I'm good at. And one of the things that's really tough for me personally is I go all over town and everybody's like, oh, you've done it the right way. You've built brand. You've got this incredible community and whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, but like you've got to 20 million revenue just on performance marketing or whatever, whatever they might have done. And I'm like, I find that really impressive because you're twice the size of business that we are or whatever. And they go, oh yeah, but that bit's easy. That bit's easy now. You've done the brand bit. That bit's really easy. And I always just say, like, I'm sick of people saying that, but we're bringing some great people into the business now, a bit more pedigree. People have been down that road before. And, I really feel like we're 20% away of like taking all that hard work and really turning into a very, successful business. And the way I kind of like feel at the moment is like, we're kind of in this Olympic cycle where we've spent the last 4 years training, we've had a few injuries, we've had a few tough times, and we're now lining up at the 100-meter final. And we've got a really great chance to break away and be something really special, but we just need to get to those starting blocks and get on with it.
It's so interesting to hear you say that, like, how frustrating it can be for to hear like, oh yeah, meta ads and you scale it this way or whatever. And really trying to like sort that out, like, oh, what does that mean? And really it's like the almost like the steak versus the sizzle. It's like so many things are just like they have that, maybe they can pull that lever and they know how to put, $1 in and get $2 out from like what the ads might be. But it's like when you really get down to it and you maybe go visit like HQ or talk to the employees or dig into the product or talk to the customers, people are like, they don't care about it. It doesn't resonate with them. If that company went away and stopped running ads, they would just disappear. Basically, nobody would be like, oh, remember that thing that like used to be all over our whatever Instagram feed or Facebook feed or TikTok. And it's like the other thing, as difficult as it is, and you have to be way more patient and you don't necessarily know where it's going at all times. You kind of get there and it's like, if Puresport went away, it's like people would notice and they'd be super bummed about that. And now taking something like that and pouring this gasoline, this performance marketing gasoline on what you've already done, that's where hopefully like you can scale it up. But like, I just think from like the outside looking in, like you never really know where people are in that journey, but being at the place where it's like you've earned the opportunity to figure out, this 100-yard or 100-meter like dash now is like a very cool place to be, as frustrating as I'm sure that it is.
And I mean, one of the things I like, I know better than anyone from speaking because like the grass is always greener, right? Like, like everyone's, oh, you've got this, you've got that and stuff like that. And I'm a big believer in like you walking that road yourself and figuring it out is like every business. Like I know there's a bit of a playbook for a number of these things, but every business is slightly unique for like what the offer is, the acquisition offer that you're going to offer on Meta that's going to really rip for you, or what's that angle and stuff. So it's just about getting the right people around and really like iterating and figuring those things out. And we talk about here in the marketing team, we split into rich and famous. We talk about team rich is like all your performance, digital stuff. And then team famous is like all our campaigns, our community, our PR stuff. And I really talk about how like team rich has got the ability to go like this because as you say, you can kind of feed the beast with a chuck a dollar in and just keep on going. But we're not going to, and we're currently a very famous business. But although rich can go like this, we're not just going to let this stay here. Like these things have to come up together if we're going to build the 50, 100-year-old brand that we want to build. So I definitely am aware that like the route in which we're taking is a much more patient sort of a route, because those things that do go up, they can come down really quickly. And the same that we talk about for the long run and no shortcuts and all those things as well. So I think all entrepreneurs, all founders, people leading businesses, I think we probably all wake up every day and think that we're dying. And I think it's probably the people who are the best, the people who are like able to use that feeling of dying to fuel ambition, but not in a way that's kind of like self-deprivating and, you put too much pressure on the team and all that sort of stuff.
As we wrap up, kind of recognizing you raise some capital, expanding not just like products and the brand, but geographically, like what does the next, call it 6 or 12 months look like in terms of if it's, you want to tease like product drops, if there's specific, goals you have for the team, if there's things that you're excited about, like maybe what should we look out for from Puresport?
Yeah. So as I sort of lightly touched on, we're building out the team there. We're bringing in some senior roles. So the investment is like one of the things I probably wasn't aware of, like what it would do is like just provide some ability to just like step back and think about things. Last year, because we were kind of like on that very tight cash cycle of like payday to payday every month, the ability to not think further than 3 weeks away, while you're in it, you're not really thinking about it that much. But once the investment lands and you really think about that, you're like, oh gosh, that's quite a crazy thing to go through. So to get a chance to step back, do some of this consumer research. One of the big things about that is like, we ask the consumers, like, where are you shopping? And, only 15% of people are buying on brands' websites, 45% are buying on Amazon, 30% are still buying in store. So it's like, gosh, we need to be in those places where people are buying. Otherwise, we haven't got a chance, no matter how good the emotional connection to the brand is. So for us, there's a big play over the next 12 months to go omnichannel. We don't want to be, the goal is not shelves. The goal is to be off shelves. So the places in which we're going into, we really want to drive rate of sale in those store, use our superpower, use the community, take the petrol stations down there, all that sort of cool stuff. We're also widening the product portfolio a little bit. We brought out another electrolyte flavor this year. We are bringing out running gels in September. So in 6 weeks' time, which is really exciting. That was like our number one requested product from people. And I think that running gels, because running's been so hardcore for a long period of time, and running gels have been sort of about marathon runners and that sort of hardcore nature of them. There's millions of people just getting into running for the first time and not really understanding it. So we're a brand that really talks about like breaking down the science and making it really simple, but talking to people in a way like, we don't want to be that kind of like really grindy performance brand, where it's like really hardcore, like get up at 5 a.m., do this. Like we talk about grounded performance, people who, they want to feel good. They want to exercise 3 to 5 times a week and not be sore the next day and all those sorts of things. So the running gels are really exciting for us. And the big thing for us over the next 12 months is like just really trying to own the UK, really figuring out that growth engine of that scalable offer, like all those sorts of bits. And then on the horizon, like in 2027, we'd love to start thinking about the US, but really approaching that in a way, that's really thought out. Again, it's true to the brand. We don't just want to come over there and pump a whole lot of, dollars into meta or all those sorts of things. Probably trying to put some boots on the ground and really having a community first approach. So next 18 months, really trying to own the UK, and then beyond that, seeing how we end up.
For folks that want to follow along, order some product, just keep up with what you have going on, website, social, anything else you want them to check out?
Yeah, so we're on puresport.co. Been trying to get the .com for like 5-6 years now, but someone in the US is holding on to it. And our handles on socials are just Puresport, one word. And then myself personally, I'm Daniel Temm. You can kind of find me on LinkedIn or Instagram, although I don't have too much of a forward-facing social presence. I'm generally chained to my desk here, trying to figure problems out. So trying to be a bit better at that, but it's a work in progress.
For sure. And also chained to your desk at 8 or 9 p.m. your time, making time for this call. So we appreciate that. We're super excited about this conversation. So thanks for being here.
There you go. No, thank you so much, Joe. It's been great to chat. And thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you got value from the conversation, please consider subscribing and sharing the podcast with a friend or colleague. It's a massive help. And if you want more content like this, including news and insights on the latest industry developments, subscribe to the Fitt Insider newsletter at insider.fit.co. And one more thing, you can learn more about our recruiting and consulting services at fit.co. That's FITT.co. I'll see you here next week.